Okay, so we were talking about Birkat Hamazon based on the parasha, which is the source of Birkat Hamazon. I learned this week that the translation of Birkat Hamazon in English is post-prandial benedictions. If like me, you don't know what that means, then we'll just go with Birkat Hamazon. So, in any event, let's talk a little bit about some of the dinim. We spoke about the basis of the 4 brachot that we have, the 3 from the Torah, right, the first 3, and the final, the 4th bracha, which is midrabanan, was added later. The truth is, when we don't eat bread, if one eats mezonot, and afterwards one says ala michya or ala gefen, whatever, that is known as the bracha me'ein shalosh, the 3-faceted blessing, right? Why is it called bracha me'ein shalosh? Because it's a short bracha, it's 1 bracha, not 3, but it contains all 3 elements of giving thanks over the food, for the land, and for Yerushalayim. And that's the idea that's following along the same sort of structure. Okay, so the Rav Melamed says over here regarding Dinei Amirat Birkat Hamazon. How do we say Birkat Hamazon? Tzarich varech lashmiע לאוזנו את מה שהוא מוציא מפיו. So similarly to the halacha that we find by Kriyat Shema, we find by Tefillah as well, that when we say the bracha, one has to actually say the bracha. It doesn't have to be that everybody in the room can hear you, but you have to be able to hear yourself. Not that you're just mouthing it, not that you're not actually making a sound, but you should be able to hear what you're saying. Right, if you just thought about the words or read along in your head, but do not actually mouth the words, you have not fulfilled the obligation. Ideally, one should say it in a little bit of a voice. When you say things aloud, it helps us to have more kavanah. And again, this is similar to what we saw by Kriyat Shema as well. Somebody who does not understand Hebrew, you can say a translation in any language that you understand. Again, it's not so common nowadays. I think people just say the bracha in Hebrew. But what happened if you left out some parts of Birkat Hamazon? We're not talking now about the Tosefet, the additional part that you say on Shabbat or on Yom Tov. That's a separate inyan. If we have time, we'll get to that. But you missed out part of the actual bracha. So kol zman she'ezkir et hayesodot shetzrichim liyot b'Birkat Hamazon yatzeh yadei chovato. So long as you've mentioned the fundamentals, the principles, the 3 categories which have to be said in Birkat Hamazon. Remember, we learned already that from the Torah, Birkat Hamazon, one has to mention Hamazon Azan, has to mention Haaretz, and one has to mention Yerushalayim. It does not have to be from the Torah in any specific formulation. That was added later on. Moshe Rabbeinu composed the first bracha, Yoshua the second, David and Shlomo the third, and that's the way we do it today. But b'di'evid, so long as you've mentioned the main points, you've still fulfilled your Torah obligation. What are they? These are the Yesodot. Levarech Hashem al Hamazon, one has to give thanks to Hashem for the food. Ubetoch habracha laskir et shmo v'shu melech haolam. One has to at a minimum mention Hashem's name, that He is Melech haolam, King of the world. V'bracha shniya ladot laHashem al haaretz. The second bracha, we have to give thanks for the land. Ulaskir shehi chemda tova al chava, as we discussed. Not just mention the land, mention that it's a good land. It's chemda tova al chava, right? Ulaskir Brit Milah v'Talmud Torah, and to mention Brit Milah and to mention Talmud Torah, which is somewhat surprising, but as we discussed already, we see how the Torah alludes to, and Chazal tell us, in the merit of these other mitzvot, so that's how we have a hold on to the land as well, and therefore they go together. V'bracha shlishit, Ulaskir Yerushalayim, the third bracha, one has to mention Yerushalayim, HaMikdash, U'malchut Beit David. Or v'bracha le'revit l'matam titan, to say the essence of the 4th bracha as well. Now, what about the question here regarding a katan, a child? Katan shegia legil chinuch. Once one gets to the age of chinuch, which is defined as hainu legil shebo mevin ba'ofen klali et inyan habrachot, the age at which one understands in general the concept of bracha. By the way, the idea of gil chinuch, nowadays we like to have everything. We have clearly defined parameters. What it is, age, 6 years old and 13 days or whatever. It's not the way it works in Chazal, right? Every person's different. Gil chinuch is essentially once the child reaches a basic understanding. Usually we say that it's around age 6 or 7, but there is a different gil chinuch for different inyanim and for different mitzvot. There are certain things that a child can understand at a certain age, and other things he can't understand till he's a little bit older. So where did we encounter this halacha very recently? Regarding Tishat HaYamim, the 9 days, and Havdalah. Right? Many people ask the question, how do we make Havdalah in the 9 days? Somebody came and asked me, should I just drink the grape juice myself, Should I give it to a katan? So what's brought down in the poskim is that ideally, because remember in the 9 days we cannot drink wine or grape juice, with the exception of Shabbat. Havdalah, which you make after Shabbat, is no longer Shabbat. So there's a question: ideally one shouldn't drink wine or grape juice, but one has to. So it's brought down the Eitzah to give it to a katan. Which katan? So it says you should give it to a katan who has to have reached the age of chinuch in order for the bracha to chal. You're saying a bracha, brei pregafen. If the child does not understand what a bracha is, then you're giving him to drink, so it's a bracha levatala. So he has to have reached that age. But what's the whole point? You want to give him to drink because we can't drink wine during this time because of the mourning for the churban. So it has to be a child who has not reached the age of chinuch for avelut of the churban. Meaning he understands the idea of bracha, he doesn't understand the idea of avelut. Okay, we can well understand that there could be a gap between those. Exactly what age that is and how to find such a child is not so easy. Which is why many of the poskim say, forget about it, just drink it yourself. Right? This is too complicated. Actually, it was Motzei Shabbat. Somebody came up to me. My son was here, and they said, should I give him the grape juice to drink? I said, no, you should drink it yourself. He already understands, so that doesn't solve. But the point is, you have a different gil chinuch for different mitzvot. But in any event. So usually we say about age 6 or so is the age of gil chinuch, at least regarding brachot. So once a child reaches that age, you should teach them to say brachot, and you should teach them to say Birkat HaMazon first, because that is the most important of the brachot, because as we've discussed, this is a bracha deoraita, as opposed to all the others, the exception of Birkat HaTorah, which are d'Rabbanan. Okay. So you write שגם ילדים שכבר הגיעו לגיל חינוך, כאשר קשה להם לברך את כל ברכת המזון, ירגילו אותם למרת הברכה הראשונה, וכך יתקדמו כפי יכולתם. It's not so easy. I know a lot of adults who struggle with this, right? To say the whole part of Birkat HaMazon, you have 4 brachot. So you teach the child first to say the first bracha, once he gets used to that, to say the second, and so on and so forth. Now, חובה מהתורה כששבע ומדברי חכמים בכזית. So we've already said that the first 3 brachot of Birkat HaMazon are midoraita, right? And the 4th bracha was added midrabanan. But it's not under all conditions that Birkat HaMazon is deoraita. It's only when the pasuk says v'achalta v'savata uverachta et Hashem Elokecha. There are 3 stages here. You will eat, and you will be satisfied. You'll be satiated. Right? And then you will say the bracha. In other words, when one has eaten and has been satiated, that's when I have a mitzvah deoraita of Birkat HaMazon. So you'll say, okay, so I only ate a little bit. Do I not have to say Birkat HaMazon? From the Torah, no. But midrabanan, yes. Rabbanan said, hang on a second, not so fast. As long as you've eaten already a kazayit, you have to say Birkat HaMazon. So he writes here, "Torah chayav adam levarech Birkat HaMazon." When a person has eaten and satiated, we have the mitzvah from the Torah of Birkat HaMazon. Chachamim hosifu v'tiknu. The sages came and added on. Shegam adam she'achal kazayit lechem kivan shene'ena yivarech et kol Birkat HaMazon. Chazal said once a person has eaten already a kazayit of bread, okay, now you have to say all of Birkat HaMazon. And just in general, this is the difference between bracha rishona and bracha achrona. All the other brachot that we have before or after food, which are midrabanan, but a bracha rishona, you would say, it doesn't matter how much you're going to eat. You have a tiny, tiny bite, you have a tiny, tiny sip, you have to say the bracha rishona beforehand. The bracha achrona is only going to be after you've eaten a kazait or you've drunk a revit. I'm not getting now into the question of how big a kazait is or how much a revit is. Kazait means the size of an olive. Doesn't mean an olive, doesn't mean more than an olive. Olives in those days, olives have changed size. I'm not getting into that discussion. But the point is that even that minimum requirement of a kazayit for Birkat HaMazon, that is midrabanan. Now the Gemara here says an amazing thing. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot Daf Chaf Amud Bet says the following. It says the Malachim had a claim before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They said, Ribono shel Olam, כתוב בתורתך אשר לא יישא פנים ולא ייקח שוחד. Okay, we're going to read it in the Torah. It says you're not allowed to take לא יישא פנים ולא ייקח שוחד. You cannot show favor and you cannot accept a bribe. And we know the principle is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu keeps his Torah. Kiviyachol. The Gemara Brachot says that Hashem davens, says Hashem puts on tefillin, whatever that means. But the point is he keeps the principles of his own Torah. So the Malachim say, Halo ata nosei panim liYisrael. So Hashem, it says in your Torah, you may not show favor, and this is exactly what you do. We have the pasuk, we know it, we hear it every day, right? It says in the Torah, Yisa Hashem panav elecha in Birkat Kohanim. So it says lo Yisa panim, and then it says Yisa Hashem panav elecha. They say, how can it be? The Malachim say, Ribono shel Olam, you are transgressing the Torah, so to speak, by showing them favor. So Amar lahem, v'chi lo Yisa panim Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, what, I'm not going to show them favor to the Jewish people? How can that be? Shekatavti lahem b'Torah. If Rabbi Yitzchak Mibaditchev had written the Gemara, this is what he would have written. So he says, Katavti lahem b'Torah. It says in the Torah, Achalta v'savata v'alachta et Hashem Elokecha. It says in the Torah, you will eat, you will say Birkat Hamazon. You have an obligation when you have been satiated. V'hem medaktakim al atzmam u'mevarchim ad kazayit. But they aren't satisfied with that. They look for chumras. They want extra. I said, says Hashem, that they only have to say the bracha when they've eaten their fill. Yet they don't wait till they've eaten their fill. They will say the bracha even if they've only eaten a kazayit. So because of that, I have to go and show favor for them. This is this amazing thing, this amazing endur, this special merit that Am Yisrael has, and therefore Hashem will show us favor. Why specifically Birkat Hamazon of all the things? Why doesn't it say, right, I told them to keep Shabbos and they keep Muktzah? Why doesn't it say, also we could have come up with anything. Why specifically Birkat Hamazon? That if you've v'achalta v'savata, and because we say the bracha even after a kazayit, so therefore we have this special merit. So it's a fascinating thing to think about. There are some beautiful answers, but we're out of time.